The air is thick with fog, not the kind that rolls in quickly like a battle cry, but the kind that saunters slowly through the morning like a retired poet sipping lukewarm tea. You walk through it quietly, your sandals whispering against the gravel path, one tiny crunch at a time. There are no birds this morning. Even the crows have decided to sleep in. The only sound is the occasional rattle of bamboo stalks swaying above you, like old gossip being exchanged by trees with too much time on their hands. It's early, very early. The kind of early where your body still thinks it's dreaming. The road you follow leads to a clearing near the edge of Edo. The sky is pale, a greyish indigo that doesn't know what it wants to be. You can smell the dew on the grass. Earthy, honest. Somewhere in the distance, a river moves slowly, carrying someone else's secrets downstream. You're walking to a duel. Not yours, thank heavens. You're merely an observer, a side character in history, the sort of person who forgets their own lunch but remembers everyone else's birthdays. Two samurai are scheduled to meet at sunrise. One of them, Kiima Hanzu, is already standing in the field, tall, stern, wearing a robe that's just a little too clean for someone who claims to be constantly fighting bandits. His hand rests on the hilt of his katana, which is supposed to be comforting. It isn't. You shift your weight nervously and try not to sneeze, or blink, or breathe too loud. You glance over and notice something missing from Hanzu's figure. He's forgotten his tessin, his iron war fan. A minor detail, sure, but in the intricately coded social ballet of samurai etiquette, forgetting your war fan to a duel is a bit like showing up to a wedding in flip-flops. Technically fine, but spiritually distressing. You probably won't make it through this day, and that's okay, before we drift further into the field. I'd like to gently invite you to like this video if you're enjoying the sound of your own breathing, and maybe subscribe if history feels more relaxing than reality. Comment below where you're watching from and what time your eyes started getting heavy. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You wait beside a withered cedar tree. Its bark peels like sunburnt skin, flaking off in slow spirals. Time does that to all of us. Hanzu clears his throat. It's not a dramatic sound, but in the hush of the clearing, it echoes like a dragon yawn. You see his opponent approaching at last Mirai Daysquek, shorter by a full head, but with eyes. Like someone who's seen too many people make bad decisions and has finally decided to join them. Their duel is not one of fury. This is no thunderclap of steel and rain. This is a quiet kind of war, one that starts with polite bows and ends with soft regret. Or laughter, if the gods are bored. Daisuke bows first, and that's when he notices it too. No fan, he says, voice low, not mocking but mildly entertained. Hanzu glances at his sleeve, shrugs. Left it at the tea house, he replies, next to the pickled radish. You would think this would stall things. It doesn't. Duels, like dinner invitations, don't wait on accessories. Historians still debate whether forgetting a tessin was symbolic defiance, a tragic oversight, or just proof that even warriors occasionally suffer from what we now call Monday brain. But one thing is certain, fans weren't just for fanning. They were used to signal commands, deflect blades, and, crucially, show that you hadn't entirely forgotten your sense of poise. Did you know some tessin were made with iron ribs and could crack skulls if used with enough enthusiasm? A gentle reminder that even grace has sharp edges. The duel begins, not with a clash, but a pause. Two men circling, sand shifting underfoot. You feel the tension, not in your chest, but behind your eyes. A kind of ancient vertigo, like you've fallen backward into someone else's memory. A breeze moves through the grass. It smells faintly of plum blossoms and dust. Always dust. You lean against the cedar, trying not to look too interested, like a casual bystander who just happens to be here for the bloodshed but is really more into the choreography. It's then that Hanzu takes a step back too quickly and slips slightly on a damp patch of moss. Daisuke doesn't advance. He waits. There's something respectful in the gesture, or perhaps he's just enjoying the moment. Because let's be honest, no one forgets their Tessin, unless they're deeply overconfident or a little distracted. You watch Hanzu recover. He's flustered now, not visibly, of course. Samurai aren't supposed to get flustered, but his fingers twitch on the hilt. His eyes scan for a second longer than necessary. That's the thing about ritual combat. It's not about killing. Not really. It's about performing dignity under pressure. Like hosting a dinner party while your house is on fire. The sun creeps over the horizon like it too has forgotten its fan. It does not rise so much as sigh. Light spreads across the field in a lazy sprawl, washing everything in a polite gold. The fog begins to lift, unraveling like silk from a poorly tied obi. You feel warmer, not from heat, but from the comfort of knowing that nothing overly dramatic has happened. Yet Hanzu adjusts his footing. Daisuke nods slightly. They move again, their blades flash once. You blink. Nothing dramatic, just a tap, an opening gesture, like the first line of a poem that never really goes anywhere. The truth is, this duel is not likely to end in death. Most didn't. Contrary to popular belief, certain theatrical stage plays samurai duels were often non-lethal affairs, a statement of skill, honor, or just personal branding. Think LinkedIn endorsements with significantly higher stakes. One major historical fact here. During the Edo period 1603 to 1868, under Tokugawa rule, the shogunate discouraged open violence among samurai. Duels had to be discreet. Fatalities were frowned upon unless politically necessary, of course, which makes Hanzu's forgotten fan all the more conspicuous. It suggests haste, or nerves, or perhaps that he was halfway through a bowl of soba when someone reminded him, "Hey, don't you have a life or death appointment at dawn?" You remember the tea house he mentioned, the one down the road with the crooked lantern. It's back. In your thoughts now, you imagine the fan sitting there, folded neatly on the table, probably being used by a sleepy maid to swat flies away from leftover pickles. Hanzu strikes again, this time more committed. Daisuke counters with a pivot and a low sweep. It's graceful, almost theatrical. You feel the rhythm, like calligraphy drawn with swords. If you weren't standing directly in the blast zone of historical tension, it'd be quite soothing. Nearby, a fox slinks through the grass, watching. In Japanese folklore, foxes Kitsunia, often tricksters or messengers. You wonder what message this one carries. Probably, don't forget your accessories. A weird cultural tidbit for tonight. Some samurai carried specially boxes called inru, which held medicine, seals, or even tiny mirrors. Not fans, mind you, but handy for checking if your helmet was sitting crooked. The duel slows again. Breathing is heavier. You feel it more than hear it. A kind of mutual exhaustion wrapped in ceremony. Daisuke lowers his sword, ever so slightly, and speaks. We could call it a draw. Hanzu raises an eyebrow. Because I forgot my fan. Because I'm hungry. You try not to smile. You fail. It's strange how deeply human these moments are. buried under all the armor and ideology. Two tired men circling each other for reasons neither fully remembers. Honor, duty, ego, or maybe just habit. Historians still debate whether this duel actually took place. Some records mentioned Hanzo, others say Daisuke was a fiction, a placeholder for an unknown challenger. But the story endures, possibly because, like all good stories, it's just true enough to be believable. The fox disappears. A wind picks up again, rustling the cedar tree behind you. It sounds like old paper being shuffled by unseen hands. You imagine a scholar in the future, digging through scrolls, finding this moment, and wondering, why did he forget the fan? You'll never know, but maybe that's the point. Time softens everything, even steel, even memory. And just like that, the duel ends. No blood, no winners, no music, just silence, and the slow return to whatever comes after being dramatic in the fog. You follow the two men as they walk slowly back toward the village. Not side by side, this isn't a buddy comedy, but not far apart either. There's a quiet truce between them, the sort that settles when both parties realize they have laundry waiting at home and dignity still mostly intact. The road back is still damp, and the fog has retreated to the treetops like a bashful ghost. Morning has taken hold now. Farmers begin to appear in the distance, stooped and methodical, tying their sleeves and eyeing the sky like it owes them an apology. You keep a respectful distance behind Hanzo and Daisuke, occasionally catching snippets of their conversation. So, you really forgot it? Yes. Was it a nice one? It had clouds painted on it. Poetic, fitting. It's amazing how quickly post-duel conversation dissolves into small talk. But that's the thing about honor once. You survive it. You start thinking about breakfast. You pass a roadside shrine. It's humble, barely more than a stack of stones with a thatched roof, but someone's left fresh persimmons there. A quiet offering. You bow your head briefly, even if you're not sure to whom. It feels polite. The stones seem to appreciate the gesture. A bit of obscure trivia. Some samurai, particularly those with scholarly leanings, would carry tiny slips of poetry in their sleeves, death poems, to be read if they fell in battle. Morbid, perhaps, but also undeniably classy. Like writing your own eulogy just in case Tuesday gets wild. One major historical fact to pocket in your kimono. The Tokugawa period brought about 2 centuries of relative peace, meaning that most samurai turned from warriors into bureaucrats. Picture knights in armor being asked to file rice tax documents. Some handled it gracefully, others wrote angry poems, and some, like Hanzo, forgot their fans. As you continue walking, you notice that Daisuke has started whistling, a soft, tuneless thing, more breath than melody. Hanzo doesn't comment, but you suspect that if his face could blush, it would. Do you ever miss the wars? Daisuke asks suddenly. Hanzo doesn't answer for a while. Then, sometimes, but I like tea. It's not the profound statement of a weathered soldier, but it's honest. You get the feeling he's not talking about tea at all. Historians still debate what emotional lives the samurai led outside of battle. Most writings are filtered through layers of decorum and metaphor. What we know for sure is this: they had time to think, long stretches of it, and not enough people to say the quiet parts too. The village gate appears in the distance, wooden and creaky, with a guard who looks like he's more afraid of boredom than invaders. He nods at the 2 samurai and waves you through without question. Either you look harmless or extremely uninterested in taxes. Back inside, the world feels louder. Not much, but enough. Pots clink. A dog barks half-heartedly. You smell miso somewhere nearby. A child giggles, the sound bouncing like wind chimes. You've made it through the morning, but remember, you probably won't make it through this day. The village of Nakamura is the sort of place that feels like it has existed forever, and will continue to exist long after history has finished caring. Thatched roofs sag slightly under the weight of time. Doors creak in ways that suggest personalities. The air smells faintly of soot, salt, and someone's fish drying too enthusiastically. You follow the rhythm of village life as it unfolds slowly around you. A merchant pushes a squeaky cart of pickled radish down the road. An old woman sweeps the same corner 3 times, each stroke more philosophical than the last. A rooster crows once, then stops, apparently content with its performance. Dice disappears down a narrow alley, waving vaguely behind him. Hanzu keeps walking toward the tea house, the one with the crooked lantern. Yes, that one. You follow inside. The light is dim, warm. Paper lanterns cast soft glows across lacquered wood and quiet conversation. You remove your sandals at the door. It feels rude to track dust across so many carefully lived lives. The hostess greets Hanzu with a look that sits somewhere between amusement and mild disapproval. She gestures to the back table. There, she says, still where you left it. And there it is, the fan, folded neatly, its surface painted with gentle clouds drifting across a pale blue sky. You've seen more intimidating weapons. You've also seen soup spoons wielded more confidently. He picks it up, opens it slightly, then folds it again. He does not speak. The room seems to pause, then resume at half speed. One major historical fact for today's tea break. The tesson wasn't just ceremonial. It could be used in battle, particularly by court officials who weren't allowed to carry swords in certain places. It was a weapon hidden in plain sight, practical, discreet, and poetic. A bit like sarcasm in polite conversation. A weird cultural detail. Some tea houses during the Edo period had secret rooms behind false walls. Not for hiding fugitives, well, not always, but for secret poetry clubs. Because nothing says rebellion like iambic pentameter whispered under your breath. Hanzu orders tea. The hostess brings 2 cups, one for him and perhaps unexpectedly one for you. She doesn't ask. Maybe she knows a tired soul when she sees. 1. The tea is hot, bitter, and grounding. It tastes like waking up slowly. You sip in silence, and Hanzu finally speaks. You'd think I'd be better at remembering things, he mutters. You offer a shrug. You remembered to duck. A small smile plays at the edge of his mouth, then disappears again like a respectful guest. Historians still debate how rigid or relaxed daily samurai etiquette really was. Some claim every bow had a purpose. Others believe the rules were more like suggestions, firm until nobody was looking. The lantern flickers. Outside, someone sings a work song off-key. The door slides open and a courier steps in, holding a sealed letter. Hanzu receives it with the air of someone who expects trouble and is never disappointed. He doesn't read it right away. Instead, he places the fan on the table, presses the letter beneath it, and takes another sip of tea. More dueling, you ask. Maybe, he says. Will you bring your fan this time? Probably forget my sword instead. And just like that, the world feels a little less sharp. You lean back against the wall, the paper screen at your shoulder. The smell of tatami and steam settles around you. Another duel, another morning. But for now, you're just sipping tea and letting the day forget itself. The tea house empties slowly, like a tide drawing back to reveal footprints and forgotten intentions. The light has softened to a kind amber, filtering through the paper walls like whispers from the sun. Hanzu sits still, the unopened letter, now slightly curled beneath the weight of the fan. You get the sense he's not in a hurry to read it. Or maybe he already knows what it says. Some messages arrive sealed, but already understood. You step outside and stretch. The breeze has returned, not sharp, not strong, just enough to remind your sleeves they're not ornamental. The scent of charcoal and drying seaweed drifts through the village air, blending into something oddly nostalgic. You don't remember smelling it before, and yet it feels familiar. Like a song you don't know the lyrics to, but somehow still hum. You wander down the narrow street again, past the shrine, past the merchant with his increasingly suspect pickled radishes, until you reach the small bridge at the village's edge. Below it, a stream trickles lazily through stones and reeds, muttering to itself like an old man telling jokes no one asked for. A dragonfly hovers briefly, considers you, and decides you're not interesting enough to land on. Fair, it's quiet here, deep, quiet. The kind that folds around you like old blankets and smells like rain even when the sky is clear. A child nearby is practicing calligraphy. His brush trembles over the paper, dipping into the ink like it's a potion. He's trying to write the word for honor, but keeps turning it into fish. His mother corrects him gently, though one could argue he's onto something. Both are slippery under pressure. One major historical fact as you watch him: the samurai class were expected not just to fight, but to read and write. Literacy was considered a warrior's edge, sharpened not only on the battlefield, but in the study. To wield a brush as well as a blade was a sign of cultivated strength and a weird cultural tidbit. Some samurai would commission artists to paint scenes of battles they'd won or imagined they'd won. These would then be displayed during social gatherings, not unlike modern PowerPoints, with significantly more blood and slightly fewer pie charts. You lean against the bridge rail. It groans beneath you, not out of protest, but age, like it's tired of holding so many people and their dramatic metaphors. You think about the duel again. Not the strikes, or the fan, or even the almost slip but the pause. That suspended moment, when no one knew what would happen. Those are the moments we remember, even if we forget everything else. Historians still debate whether the samurai truly believed in fate, or just used it as a convenient excuse when things went wrong. You stay there longer than you meant to, watching the stream, listening to the village wind down behind you. Someone calls out for rice. A door creaks. A laugh carries over the rooftops. The world moves, slowly here, but it does move. Eventually, Hanzu joins you at the bridge. He doesn't say anything, just looks at the water. "Did you read it?" you ask. He nods once. "Bad." He shrugs. "Duel tomorrow." You raise an eyebrow. "Same opponent?" "No. This one actually wrote a poem about my father once. Complimentary." "Hard to tell." He leans on the rail beside you. The wind lifts the hem of his sleeve. His fan, now tucked into his belt, taps gently against his side like it's trying to get his attention. The sun slips behind the hill. The sky goes lavender. Somewhere a bell rings 6 times, and the day exhales. Night slides over the village, like ink over parchment and avon, curling at the edges, soaking into corners where the day forgot to clean up. Lanterns bloom along the main road, trembling slightly in the wind, their yellow-orange light flickering as if unsure how seriously to take itself. You walk toward the inn, feet tired but brain gently humming, like a shamisen string plucked just once and left to vibrate. The inn is modest. Low roof, wooden beams, darkened by years of steam and stories. You remove your sandals again at this point. Your toes are practically fluent in tatami, mat etiquette, and step inside. The air smells of cedar and miso and something faintly medicinal, possibly the innkeeper. He nods at you, says nothing, then gestures toward a room down the hall. Inside, paper walls, a folded futon, and a small window that overlooks nothing in particular. You like it instantly. It has that lived-in stillness of a place that knows how to be quiet without asking. For permission, you lie down. The futon sighs beneath you. You can still feel the shape of the day pressing on your shoulders. Not heavy, just ... persistent ... from your pillow. You can hear the village. Someone is sweeping, someone else is arguing about fish prices. A third person is playing a flute badly and with great feeling. It's not music, exactly, but it's also not music. One major historical fact for your evening. Reflection: Edo period inns like this were common along post roads and often served as both rest stops and informal news hubs. Travelers, samurai, and merchants would gather, drink, and quietly exaggerate their stories until they became myths. A strange cultural detail. Some inns had guest books in the form of hanging scrolls where travelers could write haiku about their journey, the weather, or how bad the tofu was. Several of these have survived. Most of them are, quite frankly, about the tofu. You reach for the small pillow. It's filled with buckwheat holes. Not exactly cloud-like, but surprisingly supportive. Your neck appreciates the discipline. Outside, the wind changes direction. It brings with it the scent of night jasmine and old stone. You think again of the duel. Not the swordplay, but the absurdity of it all. A man forgets his fan, nearly slips, and still walks away with his honor intact. Or at least, intact enough to sleep with. Historians still debate whether the samurai truly slept well. Probably not, but maybe they found peace in small rituals: tea writing, watching shadows move across the ceiling. You close your eyes. The ceiling doesn't move, but your thoughts do. Drifting from the cedar tree to the stream to the paper fan still tucked in Hanzu's belt. You wonder if he'll forget it again tomorrow. And for a moment you care, and then you dance single quotes. Sleep gathers at the corners of your vision, slow and sure, just like everything else in this village. Morning arrives without ceremony. No trumpet of birdsong, no golden spotlight through the clouds, just a slow, yawning brightness that seeps under the paper screens and brushes your cheek like a lazy house cat deciding whether to bite you or cuddle. You open your eyes to the steady creak of wooden beams adjusting themselves overhead. The scent of rice porridge floats in from the hallway, earthy and warm, with a faint trace of pickled plum, the kind of smell that doesn't demand breakfast, but politely suggests it might be a good idea. You sit up, your joints murmur disapproval. The futon has done its job, but it is clearly unionized and ready for a break. Outside your room, the inn is already quietly awake. Slippers shuffle down the corridor. Someone coughs apologetically, and a tea kettle wheezes with what sounds like dignified exhaustion. You join the shuffle and make your way to the small dining area where 3 other guests sit in silence, chewing as if it were a sacred ritual which, in a way, it is. Hanzo is there. Of course he is, seated with his back straight, hair tied neatly, and a bowl of miso in one hand. His fan is with him this time, resting across his lap like a dog that finally came home. He nods when he sees you, says nothing. A man of restraint, particularly when chewing. You sit. A bowl is placed before you. The porridge is plain, but comforting. Softened rice, slivered radish, a whisper of salt. Not enough to thrill, but just enough to remember the world is still turning. Duels at the shrine today, Hanzo murmurs, still looking at his bowl. Oh, you manage between sips. It's a better backdrop. More dramatic trees. A major historical fact to chew on. While duels often occurred in remote fields or quiet riverbanks, they were also known to take place near shrines. The idea was not sacrilege, but symbolism, a place where the gods could witness human pride and occasionally sigh about it. A weird cultural detail, some shrines kept collections of broken arrows and snapped sword hilt offerings from warriors who had survived close calls and wanted to leave something behind. Preferably not an arm. As the meal ends, Hanzo wipes his mouth with precise economy, stands, and nods toward the door. You coming? You are, not because you're brave, but because you're curious. Also, let's be honest, what else is there to do? You step into the street. The village is once again wrapped in that quiet rhythm. Even the dogs seem to understand pacing. You follow Hanzo down the path past the same crooked lantern, the same child miswriting honor, now correcting it with fierce determination. He pauses at the foot of the shrine's steps. The trees here are tall, ancient, with trunks wide enough to swallow secrets whole. You can hear the wind stirring through them, sounding like distant applause or cautious warning. Do you know this one well? You ask. He shrugs. I've read his poetry. It rhymed. Unforgivable. A small smile. Then he climbs the steps. The shrine at the top of the hill isn't grand. It's not the kind that ends up in travel scrolls or receives imperial visits, but it has presence, that quiet authority of a place that's seen things and decided not to tell anyone. Its Toria gate leans slightly to the left, like it's eavesdropping. Moss crawls up its feet. The stone path is cracked in just the right places to make you walk slower, more carefully. Intentional reverence. By architectural suggestion, you reach the clearing beside the main hall. There, standing under a cedar tree with a crooked trunk and a suspiciously judgmental expression, is the challenger, Nakamura Genji, slightly older than Hanzo, wearing robes with a touch more flair, and a faint smirk that says he brought a poem in his sleeve and intends to use it. They bow to each other. You stand to the side. There's no crowd, no announcer, just the trees, the moss, and two men pretending this isn't a performance. The duel begins. Slowly, a step here, a shift there. They move like dancers who've only just met, each testing the rhythm, the tempo, the tone. The swords are drawn, yes, but not yet sung. Then a quick exchange. Blades tap, sparks, glance, sandals slide. You feel your pulse pick up, then immediately scold it. This is not a scene for drama. This is a bedtime story with choreography, a major historical fact. Samurai duels weren't just about swordsmanship. They were expressions of philosophy. Kenjutsu was not merely a martial art, it was a worldview. Strike too early, and you dishonor the moment. Strike too late, and you risk becoming a cautionary tale. Genji moves with grace. Hanzu with precision. The fan remains at his side, unopened. You almost wish he'd use it just to see if poetry really can bruise. Genji feints left, twists, then lowers his blade, pausing. "You've improved," he says lightly. Since Kyoto, Hanzu says nothing. Historians still debate whether these men truly knew each other, or whether all samurai eventually borrowed phrases from the same imagined past to make the moment feel more meaningful. Another flurry of strikes. No hits, no winners, just mutual acknowledgement wrapped in swinging steel. Then Genji steps back, sheathes his sword, and bows. "I concede, it's not defeat. It's performance conclusion." Hanzu bows in return, not deeply, just enough to say, "We are done here, and that's it." No applause, no music cue, just the wind sighing and a crow cackling in the distance, possibly at your expense. As they leave the clearing, you linger a moment longer. The shrine seems to shimmer in the light. A dragonfly buzzes by, the same one as before, or maybe just a relative with equally high standards. You touch the trunk of the cedar tree before leaving. Its bark is rough, its shape strange, but it holds the memory of what just happened, even if no one ever writes it down. And as you walk back down the hill, feet soft on the moss, you wonder if honor is so quiet. How do we know when we've kept it? The trees offer no answers, just shade. The walk back to the village is quieter than usual, not because anything is different, but because you are. Something about witnessing a duel with no victor, no tragedy, no crescendo. It rearranges your expectations, like ordering a thunderstorm. And getting drizzle with a side of wildflowers. Hanzu doesn't speak much on the road. Not out of brooding silence, but out of peace. The kind that settles in when you know the moment passed cleanly, like a knife through silk. He walks with his hands tucked inside his sleeves, fan still neatly sheathed at his waist. You almost forget it was ever missing. You pass the tea house again. The crooked lantern is gone, or rather hanging straight. Someone's fixed it. Somehow, that feels more suspicious than reassuring. Down the main street, the usual rhythms resume. A potter clinks bowls together for no apparent reason. Two children chase a dog that clearly regrets its life choices. A woman tends to her garden, pruning with the intensity of someone who's been slighted by a vine. You drift through it all like a ghost with good posture. A major historical fact worth collecting like a pebble in your sleeve. During the Edo period, samurai were often forbidden to engage in duels without permission from their lords. Violations could result in loss of rank or worse, mandatory paperwork, which, for a samurai, was arguably more humiliating than a sword to the thigh. A strange cultural footnote: some lords required their retainers to submit written justifications for duels they didn't fight. Yes, imagine having to explain why you didn't stab someone. Bureaucracy. The truest blade. Hanzu stops by a well. He lowers a bucket, brings it up, and drinks with the practiced grace of a man who's done this 1,000 times. Then he gestures to you. Thirsty? You nod. The water is cold, slightly metallic, and shockingly awake. Your teeth tingle in protest. "I'm done with duels for now," he says. "You said that yesterday." He nods. "Yes, but I forgot my fan then. Today I remembered." It's a strange logic, but it's hard to argue with a man whose duels end in compliments and unresolved haiku. The sun rises higher. The sky shifts from sleepy blue to something resembling intention. You both sit on the edge of the well for a while, saying nothing, listening to the hum of the world of village turning day by day, toward the inevitable. A woman walks by with a tray of dumplings. She offers two. You each take one. It is undeniably the best thing you've tasted all day, possibly all month. I'm going to the coast, Hanzu says after a long pause. I hear the fish are rude there, going to duel the mackerel. He grins, only if they rhyme. You watch him walk away again, this time not toward battle, but breakfast, and you wonder if all warriors eventually become poets, or just men who carry fans and forget why. The coast is farther than expected. The journey takes days, but time feels optional. Here's something soft, like silk draped over a lazy chair. You travel by foot along narrow roads, past farms where the scarecrows look suspiciously well dressed, and inns where the pillows are made of regret and the soup tastes like an apology. Hanzu walks ahead most of the time, not because he's in a rush, but because he prefers the illusion of solitude. He stops, often at shrines, by rivers, under trees that seem to lean a little closer to hear his thoughts. You suspect he's composing a very long, very mediocre poem. One night, you camp by a grove of pine trees that smell like cold mornings and old stories. The stars above are scattered carelessly across the sky, like a rich man's coin purse spilled in the dark. Hanzu opens his fan, stares at it, then uses it to keep the smoke out of his face. It seems oddly poetic, which he surely knows, a major historical fact to sleep under. Samurai were known to travel for many reasons: official missions, pilgrimages, or the ever-popular self-imposed exile after a minor political embarrassment. Travel was seen as both punishment and purification. It was also an excuse to grow a beard and write moody poetry by moonlight. A strange cultural detail: travelers often carried bundles of medicinal herbs sewn into their clothing, not for healing, but to ward off ghosts and minor annoyances. Mosquitoes, for example, or other travelers who talked too much. By the fire, Hanzu speaks softly. I once forgot my sword at a wedding. You blink. Was it your wedding? He shakes his head. No, but it became memorable. You both laugh, not loudly, but sincerely. The kind of laugh that's more about the warmth behind it than the joke itself. The wind picks up. The pine trees sway like old monks in prayer. A fox yips in the distance. Probably the same one, or at least a cousin with similarly sarcastic tendencies. You drift into sleep with the scent of pine in your hair and the distant sound of Hanzu humming a lullaby that may or may not be threatening. In your dreams, the fan becomes a boat, and you forget what it means to duel at all. The coastline reveals itself slowly, as if reluctant to be seen. At first, it's only the change in air, the salt that stings your nose just enough to feel real. Then the sounds, gulls with no respect for harmony, waves folding and unfolding with weary grace. Finally, the sight of the sea itself, stretching out like a great grey scroll, half-written and damp at the edges. You stand beside Hanzu on a cliff just before dawn, looking down at the harbour town below. Boats sway gently on the tide, their sails furled, their ropes creaking like they're gossiping about the sailors still asleep in their bunks. This is where he lives, Hanzu says, as if you've already been introduced. Who? The fisherman who insulted my father's poem. Ah, of course. You begin the descent into town. It's steep, and the stone path is slick with sea mist. You take careful steps, trying not to tumble into historical footnote territory. The town is small, but spirited. Fishmongers shout over crates of glistening silver. Cats prowl like bureaucrats, entitled, unimpressed, and always in the way. Everything smells of brine, smoke, and fermented ambition. Hanzu moves through the market with the calm detachment of someone above it all. He stops only once to buy a skewer of grilled squid. He offers you a bite. You politely decline because it smells like vengeance. A major historical fact as you chew on your regret. In many coastal villages during the Edo period, samurai were viewed with a mix of awe and irritation. They were respected, certainly, but also seen as bringers of drama, especially when they arrived with swords and unresolved poetic disputes. A strange cultural tidbit. Some fishermen believed that naming your boat after a samurai brought luck, but only if you never told the samurai. Once informed, the luck reversed. Boats sank, fish vanished, marriages wobbled. Superstition is precise. The duel, of course, doesn't happen because the fisherman is dead. 3 years ago, the dockmaster says, squinting at Hanzu like he's trying to match a face to a rumor, choked on a rice cake during a wedding. Ironically, not his. Hanzu just nods. He doesn't react with shock or grief, more of a quiet exhale. You wonder if he feels cheated or relieved. He walks to the edge of the dock and sits down. His fan is in his lap again, unopened. You sit beside him. The sea sloshes quietly under the planks. A boat bell tings somewhere in the distance. It all feels very final and very unfinished. What now, you ask? I suppose I could become a carpenter. You pause. Do you know how to do that? No, but I remember the shape of things. He opens the fan, holds it up to the sun. Light glints off the lacquered ribs, casting a soft pattern across the dock like shadows trying to remember a dance. I think I'm done fighting people over poems, he says. You nod. Progress, he smiles. I still hate rhyming though. The sea wind carries that smile away. And maybe, for the first time, the fan is just a fan. You stay in the town for a few days, not because you planned to, but because it seems the right thing to do. There's something about the way the gulls scream at the sky that makes your inner chaos feel perfectly normal. Hanzu takes to walking the docks, watching the boats return. Each morning, their decks littered with seaweed and salted silence. He doesn't speak much anymore, except to ask for more tea or to point out unusually shaped clouds. He seems content, not happy exactly, but settled, like a rock that has stopped rolling and started collecting moss with pride. You rent a room above a noodle shop. The walls are thin and the owner's parrot insists on reciting the same insult every night. Around midnight, something about your face and miso soup. You stop taking it personally after the 3rd evening. A major historical fact, while you wait for noodles. Samurai who left service, either through disgrace or choice, often became Ronin masterless warriors. Some wandered, some taught. A rare few became artists. Many drifted into anonymity, carrying only their names and an unusually sharp umbrella. A peculiar detail from port life in coastal towns. Some bathhouses were built on stilts directly over the water, allowing seawater to be used for washing. It was believed to ward off spirits, scurvy, and, occasionally, salesmen. You see Hanzu one morning, sitting on the beach. He's drawing in the sand with a stick. Circles, then waves. Then what appears to be a rabbit holding a sword. You don't interrupt. Genius needs space. When you finally speak, it's only to say, "You're not going back, are you?" He shakes his head. "I've decided to become a bad poet," he says. "Deliberately bad. I want to see how far I can take it before someone challenges me." You think for a moment you'll need a new fan. He grins, "A bigger one." And just like that, the story begins to fold, not with a grand conclusion, but with a long exhale. You walk back together through the market. The cats ignore you. The fishmongers don't. You buy dried seaweed. Hanzu buys an ink set. No one mentions the duels or the fan. They are memories now. And like all memories, they belong more to silence than to sound. The seasons begin to shift, not with drama, but with subtlety. The morning mist hangs lower over the shore. The wind picks up hints of pine resin from the inland hills. Even the gulls seem quieter, as if reconsidering their brand. Hanzu now lives in a modest shack at the edge of the village, perched above the tide line on stilts that groan like they're remembering a more stable career path. The shack has one room, one window, and somehow 3 tea kettles. You suspect he's starting a collection. He spends most days writing poetry on thin rice paper, which he dries on a string above the porch, letting the wind edit for him. You've read a few. They single quotes, not. Good. One reads, "Sword gone, fan folded. Fish do not respond to threats. Still, I yell at them." He's serious about being bad, and oddly, it suits him. A major historical fact: after the relative peace of the Tokugawa period settled in, many samurai found themselves unneeded in warfare and turned to artistic pursuits. Some studied tea ceremony, others took up ink painting or philosophy. A few went quietly mad and started entire schools of eccentric poetries, some of which, incredibly, were respected. A strange cultural note from the coastline: there were once traveling monks called imabuzu, huntersmen hired to investigate and spiritually neutralize mysterious sea spirits, believed to capsize boats. None ever reported success. Most retired and became very nervous fishermen. One afternoon, Hanzu asks you to help him build a small footbridge over a marshy patch beside his shack. You agree because you're either loyal, bored, or curious what his idea of engineering looks like. It turns out he's quite good at it. You fetch rocks. He arranges them. He even whistles badly, but with enthusiasm. Why a bridge, you ask? For the frogs. They don't use it. Not even once. Later that night, you sit with him on the porch. The tide is out. The stars are in. The only sound is the crackle of a nearby fire and the long sigh of the ocean pretending it's tired. "I think I was always meant for this," Hanzu says. "What? Frog bridge engineering?" He smiles. "No, doing things slowly, on purpose, without needing anyone to applaud." Historians still debate whether samurai philosophy encouraged peace, or merely tolerated it until something sharper came along. But sitting here, watching a man find meaning in unfinished poems and unused bridges, you begin to believe in peace. For its own sake, even if no one writes about it. Time becomes less of a measurement and more of a seasoning. Days pass, not in hours, but in breezes. Meals are remembered by their scent, not the clock. Conversations happen only when necessary, and sometimes not even then. Hanzu rarely carries his sword now. The fan, however, remains. He still brings it, on walks out of habit, not threat. Occasionally, he uses it to shoo away gulls. Once, he fanned a neighbor's baby to sleep. He's becoming something between local legend and odd uncle. One evening, he teaches a small group of children how to fold paper into cranes. They are delighted. One girl asks if the fan is magic. He says yes, then tells her not to tell the spirits. A major historical fact as you sip lukewarm tea and watch a paper crane float out to sea. Folding fans were not just practical or ceremonial, they were also often used as tools for signaling, messaging, and coded language among spies or noble couriers. A single flick could mean attack, retreat, or the eel is not fresh. A strange but real detail. Some fans were laced with iron or lead to be used as blunt weapons. Others had compartments for secret messages. One ambitious daimyo even commissioned a fan that sprayed powdered perfume or poison, depending on the guest. Here, however, the fan is just a fan. You begin to suspect that forgetting it at the duel wasn't the accident it seemed. Maybe it was a turning point. Maybe, deep down, he knew something had to be left behind in order for something softer to begin. You help him repair the roof that week. It's mostly symbolic work, patching holes that haven't leaked in years. But there's something deeply human about fixing what no longer needs fixing, just in case. Would you duel again? You ask once, passing him a reed mat. No, he says, unless it's with words or dumplings. You wonder what kind of man could deliver a killing blow with a dumpling. Probably one who writes terrible poems and builds bridges for amphibians. The sky darkens sooner now. Autumn is approaching. You begin to feel the ending long before it arrives, and you find you're not in a hurry. The final days of autumn linger like guests who aren't sure if they've overstayed their welcome. The leaves fall reluctantly. The wind has lost its warmth, but still hums like it remembers better days. Even the waves at the shore seem slower, as if holding their breath between seasons. You wake to the sound of Hanzu sweeping the porch. He does this every morning now, though the porch is rarely dirty. He sweeps with the focus of someone casting off old thoughts disguised as dust. You sip tea slightly bitter, slightly cold, and listen to the rhythm of the broom. It's oddly comforting, like someone gently undoing time. He turns to you and says, "I had a dream last night." You nod. He doesn't usually share dreams. There was a duel, but we were both holding fans. Just fans. No swords. And instead of fighting, we stood there fanning ourselves, ... and bowing, over and over. You raise an eyebrow. Did you win? He thinks. No, but I didn't lose either. We just kept bowing until we got tired and sat down. A long silence follows. The breeze picks up a handful of red leaves and lets them scatter across the sand. A dog barks once, changes its mind, and goes back to sleep. A final historical fact. As this day unfolds slowly like a well-worn scroll, the decline of the samurai class was not marked by a single moment, but by a long unraveling years of policy changes, economic shifts, and the rise of a merchant class that quietly outpaced the sword in relevance. By the late 1800s, many samurai found themselves wearing Western jackets, filing government reports, and reminiscing about battles they never actually fought. One last strange cultural echo. When the samurai were officially disbanded during the Meiji Restoration, some of their fans, literal fans, became collector's items among nobles and scholars, preserved not as weapons, but as art, a reminder of what once was sharp. Now beautifully still, Hanzu walks with you to the edge of the village, the same path you took months ago, now familiar underfoot, like an old melody. He carries his fan in hand, not tucked away, not displayed, just held gently, as one might carry a letter never sent. I won't write more poems. he says, stopping beneath the pine tree you once camped near. You tilt your head, retired. From literature, evolved, he says. Now I just sit near poems and wait for them to dissolve. You smile, seems fitting. Historians still debate whether stories like this really happened, or whether they were quietly rewritten by those who needed peace more than proof. But as you stand here, beside a man who once measured his life in duels and now times his day by tea and tides, you no longer need history's approval. You turn to go. He doesn't wave goodbye. He opens his fan once, slowly, and lets the wind catch it, and then folds it shut. The path ahead is quiet, but not empty. It stretches through low grass and scattered pebbles, past tall reeds that sway like they've heard your secrets, but promised not to tell. The sun rests gently in the sky, neither high nor low, like a thought suspended in memory. You walk slowly now, the kind of slow that says you've got nowhere urgent to be. The breeze at your back feels familiar, like it's walked this way before. The sea murmurs behind you, soft and endless. Every sound is distant and kind, the rustle of a bird in the branches, the creak of wood settling into its own story, the hush of your breath aligning with the earth. Each step feels smaller, softer, lighter. You pass the bridge Hanzu built, the one the frogs still ignore. It looks sturdy enough to hold the weight of time, maybe even your thoughts, maybe even the idea that forgetting a fan could change everything. The wind carries a trace of incense from the shrine uphill. A bell rings once, far away. You begin to forget the details, the names, the days, the sequence of events, but you remember the feeling. Quiet like silk, slow like dawn, deep like still water. And as the sky fades into its softest blue, and the horizon folds gently into itself, you feel the last lines of the story settle into silence. Not a conclusion, just rest, just stillness, just the sound of a fan closing dot, and your breath, slower now, easier now. Good night.